Okay, let's talk about the Edomites, part 2 to the first part of the video. This time I will be using Claude. Before I continue, guys, the quality of light that comes from my iPhone is better than the quality of light that comes from the light bulb in my bedroom. Check out the crispiness. And you could think it's because of the dual lighting. It's not. If you check the video I made earlier this morning, you'd realize that it is very crisp. Oh my god. Let's talk about Esau and the Edomites. Alright. So this morning I used Claude to check out some things. And I need to be fast because I need to get ready for church. I am a church boy. And I've always been like this since I was a child. In fact, growing up, I used to go to church a whole lot more than this. My mother used to take us to church. Oh my God. Church, 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 church. Okay, I'll read it to you guys. My first prompt was, oh, you could read it yourself, but this is very uncomfortable and I want to stare at my pretty face. The prompt is, were the Edomite justified for their actions against the children of Israel? The response from Claude. Before I continue, Claude is an artificial intelligence software that checks out information from the Bible. So it will read everything from the Bible and from the internet. And I'm saying the Bible in this specific scenario. It doesn't just check it from the Bible, it takes it from every resource that pertains to the question you are asking. So if I ask a question, Claude will go all around to get the answer to the question from every resource that pertains to the question. So here it is checking the Bible. And if I see other places, I would let you know. And I would also show you for the sake of transparency. Excuse me, for the sake of transparency. You know what? Let's just get transparent from the get go. Okay. Were the Edomite justified for their actions against the children of Israel? Sorry, before I continue, I need to be fast because my mom will soon call me, or maybe my dad, because I need to get dressed. So, speed mode. Were the Edomite justified for their actions against the children of Israel? This is a topic with real theological and historical debate. So let me lay out the different readings rather than pick a side. The biblical case against the Edomites. Several, several prophetic texts condemn Edom's action, particularly around the fall of Jerusalem in 586 BCE. Obadiah, the entire short book, accuses Edom of standing aside during Jerusalem's destruction, gloating over Judah's suffering, looting the city, and handling other fugitives to the Babylonians. Psalm 137, verse 7, records a plea for God to remember what Edom did on the day of Jerusalem, urging its destruction. Ezekiel 35 and Amos chapter 1 verse 11 describe Edom as pursuing Israel with the sword and showing no pity, driven by ancient hostility. From this angle, the condemnation isn't really about Edom's origin as descendants of Esau, but about specific betrayal, kinship, Edom and Israel, or Judah, share ancestry through Jacob. I'm coming, please. Thank you. And Esau, twin brothers, made their actions worse in the biblical framing, since betraying a brother nation during its darkest hour was seen as a deeper violation than ordinary warfare between unrelated peoples. Complicating text that some scholars raise. Before I continue, guys, that was my mother, and I need to be fast. And I just apologize to her. So I need to be very fast. Complicating text that some scholars raise. The Torah itself instructed Israel not to hate Edomites. Torah is the book of the Hebrews. The Torah itself instructed Israel not to hate Edomite explicitly because he is your brother, Deuteronomy 23:7, suggesting the relationship was meant to be different from Israel's relationship with other neighboring nations. Some historians point out that Edom's actions likely stemmed from long-standing territorial and political grievances. There are earlier accounts of conflict, including Israel and Judah's own aggressive actions against Edom under kings like David and Amaziah, not simply opportunism. The prophetic condemnations are written from Judah's perspective in the aftermath of trauma, which shapes how one-sided that portrayal is. We don't have surviving Edomite sources giving their side. The core interpretive question, whether Edom was justified, really splits along a few lines. If you read this as a moral or theological question, the biblical text itself renders a clear verdict. Edom's actions were a betrayal deserving judgment precisely because of their kinship bond. If you read this as a historical or political question, it looks more like a common ancient Near Eastern pattern, smaller or weaker neighboring states opportunistically aligning with the stronger power Babylon during a rival's collapse, which was common statecraft, even if condemned after the fact by the losing side's writers. Is there a specific angle you're exploring, like Obadiah text itself, or the brother Jacob and Esau relationship? Then I replied with, let's start with Obadiah. Good place to start. It's short, 21 verses, but dense. Structure of the book. Where am I? Am I almost done? Man, I have to rush. Obadiah breaks into two main movements. Verses 1 to 9, judgment pronounced on Edom. Guys, this is quite long. I'm going to pause this video and go and dress up and then come back to it, because children, honor your father and your mother. So let me honor my father and my mother, because my dad has been here and my mom has been here. But the thing is, I'm going to be very fast, and I'm still going to be probably the first person to finish dressing up. So I don't know what the fuss is about, although sometimes I'm the last to dress up. But lately I've been the first to dress up. So I'll be right back. I'm pausing the video. So see ya. Ta-da! I'm back. And guess the first to finish dressing? Me. I need to plug my watch and brush my hair. Well, I'm practically ready. I just can't brush my hair now, but I think my dad is still dressing up right now. I'm more excited to do this. Okay. So what was I? All right. So I said, let's start with Obadiah. Sorry, I'll be reading it from here. I'm just gonna switch back to the. Okay. Let's start with Obadiah. Good place to start. It's short, 21 verses, but dense. Structure of the book. Obadiah breaks into two main movements. Verses 1 to 9, judgment pronounced on Edom, opens with a declaration that Edom's pride, specifically its confidence in its mountain stronghold geography, will be its downfall. Edom was known for cities carved into cliff terrain, likely referencing Petra or nearby fortified sites. And the text mocks the idea that such natural defenses could protect it from divine judgment. 2. Verses 10 to 14. The specific charges against Edom. This is the heart of the accusation Edom is charged with. Standing by on the day you stood aloof while foreigners carried off Jerusalem's wealth, gloating over Judah's disaster, entering the city and looting alongside the attackers, waiting at crossroads to cut down Judahite refugees trying to escape, handing over survivors to the enemy. Verses 15 to 21. The day of the Lord and reversal. The book pivots to a broader theme that Edom's treatment of Judah will be repaid in kind. As you have done, it will be done to you. And closes with a vision of restored Israelite territory, including land that once belonged to Edom. Key imperative, key interpretive questions worth digging into. Timing. Most scholars place Obadiah around the Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem in 586 BCE, though a minority argue for an earlier setting tied to a different historical incident. This matters because if it's post 586 Edom's crime is this matters because if it's post 586 Edom's crime, if it's post 586, Edom's crime is opportunism during Judah's lowest point, which sharpens the betrayal framing. Brother language. Verse 10 explicitly calls Edom's violence against your brother Jacob, which is the theological crux. This isn't framed as ordinary warfare between strangers, but as fratricide adjacent betrayal given the Jacob and Esau ancestry. Passive versus active guilt. The text actually escalates through the verses, starting with Edom's passive failure to help, then moving to active participation in looting and capturing refugees. That escalation is often read as deliberate, building the case from bystander to collaborator. Want to go into the broader language and the Jacob and Esau backstory next, or stay on the historical question of when this happened and what triggered it? I will give a summary of everything I've read, but please, I would like to first finish reading the entire thing. Did God love Esau more than Jacob? This flips the usual question, since the biblical text actually says the opposite explicitly. So I said, did God love Esau more than Jacob? Then it says this flips the usual question, since the biblical text actually says the opposite explicitly. Worth unpacking while you might be asking it that way, and what the text and its interpreters actually say. The direct textual answer, Malachi 1 2 to 3. I'm trying to rush because I want to finish this morning. Oh my god, this is quite a long passage, paragraph, essay. Malachi 1 2 to 3 states it plainly. I have loved you, says the Lord. Jacob, I loved you, but Esau I hated. Paul quotes this directly in Romans chapter 9 verse 13 when discussing divine election. So on its face, the text asserts the opposite of what you are asking, favor toward Jacob, not Esau. While the question still has real weight, a few things complicate a simple reading. 1. Hate in Hebrew idiom. Many scholars argue Hebrew hated in brackets saying here functions more like loved less. So hate means loved less or rejected in favor of. A comparative Edom rather than emotional hatred. This shows up elsewhere in scripture. Genesis 29:31 says Leah was hated relative to Rachel. So means loved less, not actually hatred. The choice preceded any actions. Romans 9:11 to 13 specifically notes these preferences was declared between the twins were more or had done anything good or bad, which Paul uses to argue the choice wasn't about merit but about God's sovereign purpose in choosing the covenant line. This is one of the most debated texts in Christian theology, central to Calvinist reform debates on predestination versus Armenian readings emphasizing foreknowledge of choices. Edom Esau wasn't rejected from blessing entirely. Genesis 23 verse 39 to 40 says, shows Isaac still pronounces a blessing over Esau. Just as different subordinates one to Jacob's Genesis 33 also shows a warm reconciliation between the brothers as adults. Edom later gets its own land, its own genealogies, Genesis 36, and even ancestry respect enshrined in Deuteronomy 23 verse 7. He is your brother, do not despise him. The theological through line connecting back to Obadiah. This is actually relevant to what we were just discussing. If Esau or Edom was never fully cut off from blessing or covenant standing, that raises the stakes of Edom's later choice to betray Judah in Obadiah. The text isn't framing Edom as a permanently cursed outsider. It's framing Edom as a nation given its own legitimate place, who then chose to act as an enemy against king who owned them nothing but historical rivalry. Okay, so I'm guessing that they also had their own resources and they later got what they wanted from life, but they chose to be enemies of Jacob, which is true, but let's take a second. Are you exploring this as a predestination or election question, the Romans 9 angle, or more as a narrative fairness question about how Esau is treated across Genesis? Then I said, did Jacob come back to Esau to apologize? Not quite an apology in the sense of admitting wrongdoing. Not quite an apology in the sense of admitting wrongdoing outright. Though the reconciliation scene in Genesis 32 to 33 is loaded with the gestures. So gestures, but not an actual apology, that function like one. Gestures that function like an apology, but not an actual apology. Oh, you guys might not see what I'm reading. Worth looking at what Jacob actually does versus what he says. The context. Jacob is returning to Canaan after roughly 20 years in Laban. With Laban, he fled from Esau originally after deceiving their father Isaac to steal Esau's blessing. Genesis 27. With Esau vowing to kill him once their father died. Genesis 27 verse 41. So Jacob isn't casually passing through. He is returning to face the brother he specifically wronged who threatened his life. What Jacob does before the meeting is terrified. Genesis 32:7 says he was greatly afraid and distressed on hearing Esau was coming to meet him with 400 men. He splits his camp into two groups, reasoning that if Esau strikes one, the other might survive. Genesis 32:7-8. He sends multiple waves of generous gifts ahead, hundreds of goats, sheep, camels, cattle, donkeys, explicitly to appease him. that is 32 verse 30, uses this language directly, wanting to cover his face or pacify him before facing him directly. He prays explicitly, recalling his own unworthiness and fear of Esau, 32 9 to 12. The famous wrestling match with the mysterious figure, often as God or an angel, happens the night before the reunion, after which Jacob is renamed Israel. What happens at the actual meeting? Genesis 33. Jacob bows to the ground 7 times as he approaches Esau, a gesture of deep submission. 33 verse 3. He refers to Esau as my Lord repeatedly and calls himself your servant. When Esau tries to decline the gift, insisting he has enough already, Jacob presses him to accept, saying to see your face is like seeing the face of God. Now that you have received me favorably, 33 verse 10, and specifically frames the gift as something Esau is owed. Please accept my blessing that is brought to you, 33 verse 11. Language many scholars read as deliberate callback to the blessing he stole. Scholars read as not the exact interpretation. What I'm saying, let's not interpret it based on what is not in the Bible, because in the Bible he never actually apologized. What's notably absent, there is no explicitly line where Jacob says, I sinned against you, I was wrong to deceive you. The text never records a verbal confession or direct apology in those terms. How this is typically read. Most interpreters treat the material gift, the repeated bowing, the servant language, and especially that blessing callback as function as restitution. But he didn't really say blessing callback, was it? He said, he's terrified, he splits his camp, multiple gifts. He prays explicitly, calling his own unworthiness and fear of Esau, the famous wrestling. What happens at actual meeting? Jacob bows to the ground 7 times, refers to Esau as my Lord. Then when Esau tries to decline the gift, he insisted on giving him the gift. Please accept my blessing. See, please accept my blessing that is brought to you. Language many describe as a deliberate callback. No callback. Accept my blessing that is brought to you after he rejected the gift. This is it here. Jacob presses him to accept, saying to see your face is like seeing the face of God now that you have received me favorably, and specifically frames the gift. It is the gift, the goals, the castles that Esau rejected, that it was like, please take it. So I don't know why the scholars are saying that is the blessing that he took from Isaac, because if it was the blessing he took from Isaac, it should say it specifically that Esau, I'm sorry for taking your blessing. I pray that you to have your blessing back in the name of God, because there was no Jesus then. So yeah, he didn't do that. Let's not tell lies, please. Now, how this is typically read, most interpreters treat the material gift, the repeated bowing, the servant language, and especially that blessing calls back as function as restitution and implicit acknowledgement, action standing in for explicit words. Esau, for his part, responds not with demands for accusation, but by running to embrace Jacob weeping. So it was even Esau has already forgiven Jacob before Jacob came, although I don't think the forgiveness was 100%. Jacob weeping, an unexpected generous response given the earlier threat. Some read this as reconciliation without full confession. Some read this as reconciliation without full confession. It's not even about reading it as that. That is literally what it is. And these are aspects that were extracted. These are texts extracted from the Bible. Shout out to AI for simplifying the entire process. Some read this as reconciliation without full confession. Others argue the entire gift sequence is Jacob's apology, just enacted rather than spoken. For you to make proper judgment, one, you watching this, you have to be a good person. If you're not a good person, you would agree with Jacob, because you would say, oh, he tried. He went with cattle and sheep and goat, and he told him to forgive him, which I don't even think he did. He bowed his head and said, my Lord, my Lord. And he sent multiple ways of generous gifts, terrified, split his camp into two, prays explicitly, recalling his own unworthiness, bows down to the ground, refers to Esau as my Lord. When Esau tries to decline the gift, he said, please accept my blessing that is brought to you. Never said, Esau, I am sorry for the sins I committed against you, please forgive me. He didn't say that. He only gave him gift and he was just bowing to him. But how can you bow to someone without apologizing? This is actually the text is not also very fully elaborate. So I'm guessing if I really want to go deep, I need the Hebrew Torah, and then I need to be translating it, or maybe transcribing it one by one to know what actually happened. From this summarized version though, Jacob did not really apologize, and Esau just had a change of heart and was willing to forgive him. So he didn't meet Jacob with the initial hatred he had when Jacob stole his birthright. So Jacob is a thief and is an unrepentant thief. That's kind of, personally speaking, if I'm trying to, I don't want to be biased, I was going to say that I was gaslighting Esau. Because if you're not gaslighting the person and you're very sorry, you will say, I am very sorry for everything I've done to you. You will say that I am sorry for what I have done to you. And if you wanted to now commit a form of retribution, you now say that the blessings that I stole from you, this is it, you can have it back. Then I will know that you are being real. But I think after the entire emotional process, Esau probably went back to his land and he thought to himself that Jacob was not sorry. He was just gaslighting me and he gave me gifts. Maybe because he thought I was poor, or maybe because he felt like I would be hungry. But not because he was very sorry. Although I think he was sorry, but he never said it. And I cannot say that you mean, I cannot assume what you don't say. So I can't assume for Jacob that he was sorry. Now let me calm down. The main storyline is that at the Edomites, the curse and the plagues and the insults that was rained on the Edomites, was it justified? I don't think it was. Because the Israelites, descendants of Jacob, are not very good people. Same with Jacob is not a very good person. And so if the Edomites refuse to help them, regardless of their kingship, I think it is well deserved. And I think if they looted them, looting them might be cruel, not helping them might be cruel, but it is not out of the ordinary for Esau to do. Esau could be a very good person. It could have been a better person. His entire lineage could have been a better person, but they chose not to. And that is bad, because blessed is he that forgives, or something like that. I don't know that specific part. I'm not going back. I'll address that in a different video. But it is, you are much more a blessed person when you do the right thing. This is biblically speaking. But as a human being too, I think your ability to forgive people and let go shows that you're a kind-hearted person, even when they do you wrong. But this is because you're extremely good. Because think about it. If you're watching this, if someone steals your birthright, as a Nigerian, this is simultaneous to stealing his glory and then running away. And then after 20 years, sending him cattle and donkeys, but never really even apologizing, just appeasing him with gifts. I think Esau's anger and the anger of his offsprings was justified. And the funny thing is, there was a part where I read that at some point there was King Herod merged the Israelites. I think I will look for that. At some point, King Herod merged the Israelites and the Edomites together, so much so that the Edomites, like at some point, the people ruling the Israelites were even Edomites. Like there was a king that ruled the Israelites that was an Edomite. Funny, right? Let me see if I can find that, because that was what I read on Claude yesterday that gave me more insights to this. But you should also feel free to check it in your own spare time, because I can't find it and I need to go and brush my hair. I might talk about it when I get back from church though. But yeah, so I think the Edomites' actions is not unjustified, and I think what is not even justified is placing a curse on the Edomites. Like, and even from what I read, David and another king still attacked the Edomites. So it wasn't like maybe they were not rivals; they were rivals. But I guess placing the curse on them is because they were rivals. But now we are not talking about the God factor, which is the whole loving God. So God has people who are his favorites. I've spoken fast and I've rushed my train of thought. I'll probably correct myself in some other videos. But yeah, God, but still in this video, think about it. In this video, think about everything I've said and Let me know if I've said anything wrong. Although I want to be very, very accurate. I don't think I've not been accurate, but you can also let me know. And in other videos, I'll still over elaborate and even correct some things I feel like might have been wrong. But God is all loving, and I think humans are responsible for their actions. So I do think the Israelites were punished for their actions. But I don't think there should have been a specific curse on the Edomites. But then again, even with the curse on the Edomites still later were like the Jews we have now is a combination of the Israelites and the Edomites. But at some point though, I think their history disappeared. So maybe they just stopped documenting their histories, or maybe they all died out. But also at some point, the Edomite was the king of Israel. I've forgotten his name. The more you know, the less you know, but the more you know. The more you know, the less you know, but the more you know. But do you guys think placing curses on the Edomite in Obadiah was right? Because I don't think it was. And now that I even think about it, God always saying the Israelites were his chosen people is just very weird. Because they were not any better than the people they met. As a matter of fact, they were worse because they got to experience God, and anytime they meet people that didn't believe in the Hebrew God, which is their God, I said, excuse me again, I said the Israelites are worse than the people that they met because they got to experience God. But by God, I mean they experienced their own Hebrew God, who is called Yahweh. So because they experienced Yahweh and his powers, and Yahweh helped them to defeat their enemies, you would think they'll be loyal to Yahweh. But no, every time they meet people who never believed in Yahweh, they usually abandon Yahweh and go to those people. And these people that they meet, at least these people are loyal to their own God. And for them, the way Yahweh is as real to the Israelites is the same way their gods are as real to them. So in a way, the entire thing is just very confusing because Israelites are your chosen people, yet every chance they get to run away from you, that is what they do. To go and worship other people's foreign gods. But all these other people, their foreign gods are their own God. So the way Yahweh is as real to the Israelites is the same way all these foreign gods is as real to these people. But I think the only reason why Christianity was not later propagated through the entire earth was because non-believers were really, like, if I'm thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm thinking about how Christianity came to someone like me or my lineage, it's because one, my ancestors that were, let's say, Shango worshippers, a lot of them were killed when colonialism came. They killed. They killed. The reason why I am a Christian today is because most of my ancestors that were Shango worshippers were killed. And then they now give them Christianity, like, take Christianity. Take Christianity or die. That was it. That was it. I will talk about that later in AI. Because now I have to fully get dressed. But I've left you with a couple of things to think about. Let me know what you think in my comment section.